Other than subtitles in YouTube, is there anything new that I missed that I have to turn on?
Nope, should
Cool.
be it. Folks are finding the subtitles in Zoom helpful. Just out of curiosity, like thumbs down or thumbs up or thumbs down in the chat or reaction or whatever. I'm just curious if folks are actually finding that useful. Cool, I'm seeing some yeses in the chat. Awesome. Glad to hear. All right, let me just see who's in chat. All right, I think we have enough folks here to get kicked off. So welcome everyone, happy Monday. Can you believe it's already the start of the 8th week? It's you're about the 3rd through, which is crazy. I can't believe it. I don't know about any of you, but I'm just gonna go ahead and kick off with a couple quick announcements, like always for these demo days. I'll ping along the announcements document in the Zoom chat real quick. And let me share my screen just for the recording here. Just a couple of things really quick. So like I said here, we're still in our 4th module, week number 8. Max is going to be taking you for weeks 8 and 9 as your main instructor, and then Karen will continue to be your teaching assistant as well for these next 2 weeks. Really just a couple quick things for announcements for today. One, just please remember to complete the weekly feedback surveys every Friday. We set an automated Slack message that'll go out, I think, Friday at 10 or 11 a.m. It just is really helpful for us to see kind of what's going well, what's working, what's not going well, all that good stuff. I don't know, Max will be talking about some of that as well today, but when you have a moment, if you wouldn't mind just completing it for last week, these are really critical for us to just kind of see how everyone's going and what we can do to ultimately improve the program. Next up here, just FYI for folks. So I held my first open office hours last Friday. Thank you to all that have joined. The schedule here just for my next remaining ones here. And of course, if you ever want to set up one-on-one time with me, you can go to my Calendly link here, or if you go to careersandcode.org/mentors, I'm the first link there. So if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, feedback, like literally anything that I want to discuss, just feel free to grab time on my calendar here. But hopefully we'll see some folks at my next open office hours. For those that you have attended, I hope you found it helpful. I did forget to record them, so I will be sure to do that for my next open office hours. And if folks want me to hold these on like a more regular basis, please let me know, and I'd be happy to do so. Another quick just reminder, just for student stipends. So if you would like to submit expenses to us that fall within our student stipend guidelines, I just linked the document on this as a reminder. Every student gets up to, I think it's $250. Let me double check, it's in writing, $255. I know it's a weird amount, but this is everything that the stipend can be used for, outlined here, things that it can't be used for. If you have questions on this and the process, how to get reimbursed for expenses, anything at all regarding the stipend, please let me know. We haven't had any students submit the stipend to date, which is fine, but just to make sure, and just a reminder that this is available to you, for anything that, to help you ultimately complete the program, learning materials, web services, home internet support, etc. So just want to throw that out there again as a quick reminder that that is something that you can ultimately get reimbursed for the things that are on here. If you ever have questions on can I buy this or not, just ask us. Then that's the last thing I have for announcements. So that was pretty quick. So for Capstone Demo Day today, as always, just a quick recap, just talk about your, give a status update where you're at. Feel free to share your screen with anything you have to demo here. Figure we'll get through all the students in about 30 minutes or so, 2 minutes per student. Recommend that first minute, just be any quick updates you have, problems solved, lessons learned, all that good stuff. And then the second minute, share your screen if you have anything to demo. If you have, web pages, wireframes, any of that good stuff in that second minute, please do so. And then as a reminder, as always, to submit the peer review form either during submissions or after class. and then you can view other submissions on the announcement links here. I know we got this question last time, just for where like we think you should be able to capstone overall. So, you know, if you don't have this today, you know, don't freak out, totally fine. But by the 30th, we had recommended you have some basic 2 to 3 page website. So if you have, you know, something locally to demo for today, that'd be amazing. By the 17th, given how you're still learning JavaScript and React will be coming up pretty soon, just starting to think about how you start to incorporate some very simple JavaScript, even if it's like a couple lines of code on your website somewhere or whatever your project is, but having something for JavaScript into your project just to start thinking about for the next demo day. So that's kind of what we would recommend to you, just to keep on pace with the curriculum is currently at for your capstones. And I think that's everything. So I'll get kicked off in just a minute. Like always, I'm going to start sending just a quick poll in the Slack channel, just like we did last time, just with a quick questionnaire. I'll send it anonymously like I did as well, just to get a gauge of where everyone thinks they're at in their capstones, just based on what I just said, and overall just how you're feeling on your capstone project. So any questions before we kick off with capstone updates here I can answer?
One thing I'll just take the time to mention this now. So you guys should be meeting with a mentor at least once every other week. And so those should be 30-minute meetings, and there are 2 points of meeting with a mentor. It is not all capstone based, but capstone is one of them, right? So a mentor, you can choose to change mentors throughout the program. You don't need to meet with the same one every time. But the point of meeting with a mentor is, one, so they can help you on your capstone and see the progress that you're making and try and help you in the next check-in. And then 2, that mentor can also help with class, right? So what we are teaching in Careers in Code is what is used professionally. So just because you know, one instructor is teaching that week does not mean that you have to go to them for mentorship, or you can. The main thing that we want to do is make sure that you're just checking in with a mentor every other week. So there's someone outside the program or outside of just the instructor who's watching your progress and making sure that you're getting where you need to be on the capstone. So the mentor page at Careers in Code, that website is a great place to get in touch and set that up. Jesse just sent that in the chat. Thank you, Jesse. And there is also a form that the mentor fills out after your meeting, which helps us understand as instructors where you're at and how you're making progress on the capstone and also in class. So if anyone has questions about that, now is a great time to ask it. If you have questions that you don't want to ask in class, feel free to Slack me or Jesse or Dana, and we'll be happy to answer them as well. But that every other week is kind of what you want to be shooting for mentorship.
Thank you, Max. I went ahead and added that as an announcement as well on that document that links to that form. And just summarize what Max said there. Any other questions? We can dive into some capstone updates. Looking forward to seeing everyone and where they're at. All right, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to throw them in the Zoom, and then we'll answer them when everyone's wrapped up here. But why don't we go ahead and get started here? So Ariel, if you want to go ahead and give an update on your capstone.
Hi. So I was out with COVID last week. So the only thing I updated, honestly, was my aesthetic for my HTML and CSS. I added some JavaScript, but honestly, I'm not comfortable with it. So that's the only update I have for this week, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks, Ariel. And I'm sorry to hear that. That's very unfortunate.
No, thank you. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to I took the week off, honestly, and that was probably the best thing I could have done for my health. But this week I have plans to move forward and get past the HTML and CSS and get the JavaScript a little bit better for my modals, for my buttons for my login and register. So that's the plan for this week, at least.
Okay, perfect. And then let us know how we can help, at all. Just with Max mentored, with Max just mentioned, sorry, the mentors is a great way to, get extra help for everyone as well. All right, thanks, Ariel. Next up, Brandy, you want to give an update on your project?
Yes. I've started, so since the last update, I've started to incorporate JavaScript. My challenge for next update is getting the JavaScript that I incorporated is currently being ignored. Like it's not working. So that's my challenge for next time, is to figure out how everything is going together, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandy. Anything the demo offer today, Brandy?
It looks like a whiteboard.
Okay, no worries. Just I'll ask everyone. So thanks, Brandy. Brielle, you want to go ahead and give any updates to your capstone?
So I have started my main HTML search, and I can share that. I do my the class on a tablet, so it to watch. So I just have to switch the screen. So I've just started to put my search together. It doesn't look very pretty yet, but you know, getting the different buttons and layout. But that's about as far as I've gotten. I was not able to incorporate any JavaScript yet, but I am already thinking about how it will fit into the website for the search and filtering through the databases and stuff as I set those up on there.
Awesome. Thanks, Brielle. And for everyone as well, I know some folks aren't able to kind of like demo stuff. Feel free to throw things along in the Slack chat. Hopefully that's been helpful as well for folks, just to kind of see where everyone's at. So feel free, you know, Brielle and anyone else as well, if you'd like to throw anything in there for thoughts, feedback, all that good stuff. Thank you, Brielle. Next up, Carolyn, you want to go ahead and give an update, Carolyn?
Sure. I have no visuals to show right now, but I will be putting them on Slack. And I did run some by Gus and got some really good feedback, ideas how to change my navigation. So that's that's a bit of progress too. And you know, that I'm able to use InVision. It's like major. But anyway, I still need to I have sort of a basic HTML frame, and all the pages will have that, but I have yet to really have that work and to connect the pages and CSS. And I haven't even thought about the JavaScript yet, even though it's an assignment we had. It's, you know, but the idea is there. I mean, I know it. So I will be coming forth with more wireframes and more flowcharts too, because those help other people to see what's going on. But one big thing, the mental health app is not a new idea. There's like about more than 10,000 of them, according to something I read. So I did some research initially just to see, you know, what would come back for the kind of thing I want to do. So one of my things that I want to do, and I don't want to get bogged down on this because I need to produce, but I want to take a look at some of what's out there already. So I collected a little, not a database, but just a bunch of links, just to kind of see, you know, what people are doing. You know, I'm not inventing something new, but I'm giving it my own twist and my own spin and my own passion. So that's kind of an important part too. You know, the more planning you can do ahead of time, the better. So I just kind of want to see, you know, how are other people doing it? Maybe I could look at their code and learn from that. And, you know, so that's where I'm at. And I'd like to be further ahead, frankly, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks.
And one thing I'll just note for Carolyn and everyone else too, like, don't worry if there's, you know, similar apps, right? Like, I think we've said this before, but, you know, this capstone is a celebration of technology and learning. So like, you know, if there's similar apps, that's totally fine. You know, so don't sweat that part at all. It's really just building something that you think is cool and that you're passionate about. And that should kind of help inform, you know, as you build it. So, and that goes for everyone as well, of course. Awesome. Thanks, Carolyn. All right, next up, Dominique, if you want to give an update on your capstone.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can show my screen. I haven't really done much of a lot on mine, but pretty much I'm trying to size it up. I finished all my wireframes. I'm just gonna keep it to just flowers, crystals, and for right now, just for blogs. So I got my pages down right now. It's just pretty much just adding and subtracting and getting everything on the page right now. So this is as far as I went. I'm getting ready to add JavaScript buttons once I figure it out. But that's pretty much all I have right now.
Awesome. That was great, Dominique. Awesome work. All right. Next up, Fabilia. You want to go ahead and give an update?
Yes. Right now I have a wireframe. I like the way the wireframe came out, and I have one page with at least the navigation bar on it or a header. And I've incorporated JavaScript, but it's pretty blank, and I'm trying to figure out how to get some of the text moved over, well, according to what I have on the wireframe. So that's about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Fabilia. All right. Next up, G Hill, you want to give an update on your capstone?
Yes. So currently, I still haven't. I coded some stuff, but like it's not really part of my capstone. It's more like just practicing and learning. I'm trying to get into like CSS animations, and I'm getting familiar with Node.js or whatever, because I know that you can have like a real time, I guess, chat with it. So I've been developing some of that stuff, but mainly the CSS and animation portion, not too much of the JavaScript. Just been brushing up with that.
Gotcha. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Yahil. Next up, Karen, you want to go ahead and give an update on your capstone?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So can I share my screen here?
Yep. On the bottom, you should see a button. It's a green button. It's a share screen.
Okay. Push that. Wait a minute here.
And it should tell you what device you like to share.
Okay, here we go. All right. Are you able to see it?
Yep.
Okay, so I have a bit more progress than I had last time we reported, but I was able to get my HTML, CSS in place. We also worked with the JavaScript, and I was able to find some JavaScript on CodePen, but it actually did not work as far as, because I wanted to have the cards where you can shuffle them and have two separate decks of cards. So when you come to the website, you can choose whether you want to pick a card from the traditional deck or the newer deck. Okay, so I have two decks that I want to be able to be seen. And I have here, as far as the images go, we have the wireframe here. And that is what, that looks like.
Karen,
And
can you
these
share?
are some of,
Can you
excuse me?
stop? Can you stop your share and restart it? All we see is your Finder window right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you stop the share and then when you start it over, you should be able to pick like desktop 1, and then we'll be able to see everything.
Okay, so.
Yeah, and then Karen, if you could just wrap up in like 30 seconds, Karen, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Are you guys able to see my screen at all?
No, just your Finder window.
Okay. So, all right.
If you could just send your wireframe in Slack so we can move on to the next student, and then we can provide you feedback over there.
Oh, okay, awesome. And I will send a picture of the HTML over there, because we were able to get everything in, get some things in there. We just could not get the cards to shuffle. So I'm going to be working with Gus on that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All
I
righty.
just wanted to remind you, I think if you just click on your index HTML, they can just see what you've done so far with it.
Okay.
Yeah, so Karen, if you want to send those along in the chat when you're able, just to be cognizant of everyone's time.
Yep, just double click it real quick and it should pop right up.
Okay.
Not, okay.
No, because she's
It-
only sharing her Finder window.
Yeah, okay, yep. So just go ahead and just copy and paste everything over there.
Okay. Will do.
Thanks, Karen.
All righty.
All right, next up, Kyle, if you want to go ahead and get your update.
Yes, so I've been working on coding out a couple of pages for my site, primarily the one for like if you're at a certain building. It's probably easier if I just actually share my screen while I'm talking. Hold on. Okay, so this is like the site, what it would look like on your mobile phone if you were at a particular building. I put the audio on the bottom so you can control that as you scroll. And these are like toggling between playing the narrative and playing different sound effects. So that's what it looks like on mobile. And then here's what it looks like on big screen. So I was able to add the functionality with the thumbnails changing the picture for my homework this weekend, but I'm having the problem that everything jumps all around when you change the picture, and that's particularly a problem like here because then you can't even see the thumbnails to click on anymore. So Karen was helping me work on that this weekend, so that's kind of in progress, something I'm dealing with now. And then I also have like kind of a main page that I'm working on, but there's a bunch of changes I want to make to that as well. That's kind of in progress. I really don't like the way it looks on the larger screen. I've got to work on that. And I also have been working on doing more wireframes and trying to put in the, you know, what it's going to do in terms of like JavaScript and stuff like that on the wireframes. So this is kind of a page if you were going through it manually, if your location wasn't on your phone, that was what would come up.
Awesome.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Looks great.
This next steps is trying to figure out what the actual sites are so I can do some research and how many sites are feasible. So I don't do lots of research on places that aren't going to eventually make it into the tour.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Great work. All right. Next up, LaTonya, you want to go ahead and give an update?
Yes, thank you. So I spent this last time isolating creatives that I'm going to include in my capstone, and I had to go through a couple thousand. I decided to focus on creatives I collected while I was at Costa Rica. One of the challenges is that I just don't want people to think that that's all I can do, because it's mostly going to be landscape and wildlife, and I do a lot more than that. But I focused on high quality videos so I can extract the complementary images from that. And right now it's about 200, and other challenges, I feel like that's a lot. You know, I don't want the focus to be on the creatives so much as me putting this capstone together. I did create my wireframes digitally, not the high def ones yet. That'll be next, as well as working more on the code that I'll be using. And I did that for the desktop version, the mobile, and an admin page. But now I'm thinking I may not even need an admin page if I continue to code into the site. So that's another thing. I've decided to use Gumroad as the e-commerce cart and payment software, which will include their API and documentation, what have you. And I'm not intentionally sharing my screen because I want to use my Trello board more. So I plan to incorporate more content into that, like sample creatives that I'll be using, the wireframes and what have you.
Awesome. Thanks, LaTonya. Appreciate the update. All right. Next up, Sarah, you want to go ahead and give an update for your capstone?
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
All right, so this will just be like the page for a specific event. Pretty basic. I've got a map with the location, a link to the business, And the other thing I did was this little account logo up here brings you to a page where you can sign in or register for an account. And then the only other thing I did was for the JavaScript homework, I did a little function where if the passwords don't match, it gives you a little alert. But yeah, that's all I've got so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Looks great.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Mel. I'm sorry, I skipped over you, Mel. So Mel, if you want to give your update.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Yeah, I'm having a problem sharing my screen, but yeah, I'm probably with the system preferences. But yeah, since the last update, I've got my wireframe for 4 pages so far, and I've started my HTML and CSS. I'm trying to share my screen so I can show it. But
Do you know what you said? It's a system preferences issue, Mel?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you can't swing it, no worries. You can always put the Slack message after this if you're unable to.
Yeah, I'll just send this Slack. But yeah, that's what I have. So I have four wireframes, and I have just about all my HTML and CSS done on one of the web pages. I've got to create some, these specific drop down menu bars that I want, so I can, create the link to the other pages I want to create. But yeah, I want to share my screen so I can show it, but I'll just send it in Slack right now. And that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mel. All right, next up, Shaw, you want to give an update for your capstone?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I've just finalized the wireframe for all pages, for different pages. I also have the logo, and I've received the images from the business. They are ready. I also have a basic CSS and HTML structure. So hopefully during next update, I will be able to share something.
Awesome.
That's all.
Great. Thanks, Shaw. Appreciate it. All right. Next up, Shantina, you want to give an update for your capstone?
Hi, good evening, everybody. I was able to take advantage of some of the office hours to get some help and get started. So my wireframe, or the beginning wireframe, has been created, as well as the beginning stages of the site. We completed links because the girls, for my project, I'm creating a website for my girls in order to feature some positivity products for other young girls and things. So of course, with young girls and teens, they incorporate social media. So we will be creating links to go to social media pages and things, as well as putting lots of content and things on there. So I'll be continuously working on that stuff for now.
Awesome. Thanks, Shantina. All right, and last but not least, Susan, you want to give an update for your capstone?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen or no?
Yes.
Okay.
You shared just the Finder window, though. So
Yeah.
if you stop your share, because if you open anything, we can't see it. So if you share again and just pick desktop 1.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks. I feel behind, but this was my flowchart originally, and I have a wireframe for the first page. I attempted to use the InVision. I don't know. I'm sorry. I need to exit out of here. Sorry.
That's okay, Susan. All right, thank you, Susan. All right. All right, everyone would just like to take, 4 4 or 5 minutes, just any thoughts, feedback, questions. I'm happy to anything anyone wants to bring up or discuss.
Jesse, I had one thing I wanted to ask more about the mentors.
Yep.
For the project. So I guess I feel like I'm really struggling about reaching out to people that I don't really know for questions that I don't really know exactly what I need for either my capstone or different things. So I guess I'm finding that a little bit of a barrier about setting up mentorship.
Yeah, that's a great question, Brielle, and something that's like we're aware of as well. We're like you simply might not know who like the best person to set up that time with is. For right now, whoever you're most comfortable with setting up that one-on-one time with, and then at the same time, whoever typically is teaching content that week, right, is probably going to be your best bet. But all the folks that are listed on that mentor page are all happy and willing to set up time with you. But yeah, so whoever you're most comfortable with, and generally whoever is teaching for that week is what I would recommend personally. And then if any other instructors or Karen, Max, if you guys have any thoughts or on that, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, even if they're not listed on the mentor page, the TAs that you've seen already throughout the program, and teachers and instructors coming up, feel free to reach out to them on Slack. So even though they may not have filled out the form to get on the page, they are probably, I can't speak for them, but they are probably likely to help with mentorship. The other thing is you're not making a decision here where it's like once you pick a mentor, you're locked in, right? If you pick a mentor and they get your capstone and you're getting great feedback with them, go back next or in 2 weeks. If you meet with them and you're like, my God, I can't believe I just wasted 30 minutes on that, go to a different mentor. That's completely fine. You can keep a mentor through the whole program. You can jump around. But definitely reach out because you'll find, especially in the front end modules, pretty much anyone who has taught or has been a TA so far will likely be able to help you on the HTML and the CSS stuff. And then once we get into JavaScript, that mentor list will start to shrink down a little bit. But definitely reach out to the instructor. You could even ping me and go, I hate you, Max, but I would like a recommendation for someone who can help me with this. And I can also help you refer you to someone as well. So, the important thing is just to reach out.
Max, we love you, first of all. And thank you for saying what you did, because I did have someone in mind, but I didn't know if I should ask because they might be too busy, but someone I think would be really great to start with. So I will go ahead and pursue that.
And they don't have to be part of
not too far behind Susan. I'm like, oh my God. So
they don't need to be in the Hack Upstate family. They don't need to be involved in careers in code. The one thing I will say is if you do reach out to a mentor outside of the program, make sure you share with them 2 things. One, the curriculum, so they have an idea of what you're learning, right? If you reach out to a mentor who is a Python developer or Java developer, they're still probably going to be able to help you, but they may do something completely different at work than what you guys are learning. So one, share the curriculum with them so they have an idea of, oh, you're learning JavaScript and Node and these things. And then 2, also share the capstone outline with them and say, this is the capstone that I'm trying to make. Here's what we're trying to accomplish in this project. Chances are, if you're meeting with someone outside the program, the first 15 to 20 minutes is just going to be explaining to them what you're learning and what you're trying to do in your capstone. But the good news is subsequent meetings after that should really be a nice touch base of, here's what I'm struggling with in class, and here's the progress I've made on my capstone. Here's what I'm thinking is next. Does that sound right to you?
yeah, that's great. The person I have in mind is in the program, but I didn't see her on the mentor list. But I'm glad you said all that because that's really good too.
Yep.
Thank you, Max.
Yep.
I will shut up now.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, just to reiterate, hammer home. Yeah, if they're not on the mentors page, just because they're not listed there, just reach out to them and just ask if they want to set up some time. So it's just a nice, convenient place. Eventually, we'll get more folks listed there, but Thank you for all that, Max. Very helpful.
And Slack is definitely your friend. As professional developers, we live in Slack. I literally spend a quarter of my day sending Slack messages. So even though it may be an unknown tool to some of you guys, it is really the best way to reach out to people. In addition to email and all of that stuff is good, but Slack is a great resource to get in touch with people.
I also wanted to add that even though I'm primarily doing program management work for Careers in Code, I am able to help with the HTML, CSS, and the Bootstrap CSS. The easiest way to schedule time with me is any office hours that I have available. If you can go right into Google Classrooms and into the Calendly section and just grab a time with me there. I have hours set up 2 nights a week right after class is over with, between 9 and 11 at night for those who like to stay up later. And then 2 days during the week, I've set up open office from about 3 to 5. So if you consider this like, you know, if you were actually walking into someone's office as someone who's on staff, that's the time that students can just come in and out. It can be anything random. You can, you know, express frustration about a project, and I can help you with your breathing exercises if that's what you want. But just literally just click on that Calendly link, because I'm usually more on Slack than I am off. But that's the easiest way to pin down a time with me if you need it.
Perfect. Thanks, Dana. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna hand it over to Max now for the rest of your class. So, and I'm gonna go ahead and drop. So thank you, everyone. Also work on your capstones. And again, if you need anything from me at all, my Calendly link is on the mentors page as well. But I'll hand it over to Max, and thanks everyone, and have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, Jesse. See you later.
Thank you, bye-bye.
I just want to say something real quick, guys. Think about what you know now compared to what you knew 8 weeks ago. You'd be surprised at how much you've already learned. So I know everything is crazy overwhelming right now. Believe me, I've been there, but you have learned a lot in the past 8 weeks. So that's something that you should really be patting yourself on the back for.
And another thing too, at the end of 26 weeks, you're not going to walk out of this and be like, oh, I've learned everything that I need to for my job forever. I'm never going to stop learning, right? When I hire people, the thing that I look for most is persistence. And the second is the ability to learn. So I hire people all the time who are not JavaScript developers. My company is fully JavaScript. But if I'm hiring for a senior developer role and they come in with 10 years of Python or Java experience and they are willing to learn JavaScript, they likely have a spot at our company, right? So this learning process continues much into your careers. I still learn new things every day. I still need flexibility. I still learn things from my development team where I'm like, oh, that's a great tool, or oh, I would have written that code a totally different way and it would have taken 2 times as much code, right? So I'm constantly learning. There is a process in software development with merge requests or pull requests at your company where you don't just get to write code and send it out there and have people use it. There are other developers on your team that will review your code, just like when you send in an academic paper and an editor goes through it and then sends you back feedback. Same process for code review. So getting into the job market, you will find there are either 2 or 3 levels of job roles. There is entry level, there are junior roles, and there are senior roles. Not all companies have that entry level role. They consider everyone junior. But as a junior developer, you are not expected to be dumped into the workforce and on your own and just writing code, right? The point of having that junior role is so that you have a senior developer on your team that you can learn from and that you can go to as a resource. So that mentor program in Hack Upstate is kind of what we're trying to emulate in the workforce, right? Is this have someone you can reach out to, just touch base with them. And again, I cannot stress this enough. It is for both your capstone and for things you have in class, right? I've met with a couple of students already who have asked great questions where I'm happy to answer it, and I'm thrilled to see that progress and have you guys come up with those questions. So definitely reach out and keep track of your progress, right? We celebrate different errors. We celebrate making progress and moving on to the next step. Any questions, any feedback?
Yeah, thank you so much for throwing a thing out so we can kind of give you the barometer of where we're at. And yeah.
So yes, and thank you for filling out all of those forms.
I'm more behind of myself than I've ever been, and it's really not a comfortable feeling. I need a week to get caught up, and that's not going to happen. So I really appreciate your sensitivity. Everyone, you know, all the faculty, they really get this thing, and it is a boot camp, but you're not trying to kill us either. So I appreciate you having that communication with us and talking with Gus to see where we're at and everything. I felt like I could breathe a little more. So thank you.
Yeah, and so the good news is this week, I don't think we're going to cover anything new this week. The entire point of this week is to make sure that you guys have JavaScript fundamentals down. So you're stuck with me next week as well, and that's when we'll start getting into some more advanced stuff and talking about importing code and reusable code and all kinds of fun stuff there. But this week, we're just going to kind of review content, and there will definitely be ways that I explain something that will click and Gus covered it, but it didn't, or vice versa. You'll be like, I can't believe he's explaining it that way. It makes so much more sense to me the way Gus explained it. That is fine. This week is all about hands-on JavaScript, right? It's going to be, let's build practical things. What we are going to start today is a to-do list app. And we are going to build an entire to-do list app, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And all of a sudden, all of that work that you did with arrays and popping items out and shifting them around and splicing things in and out, all of a sudden in a to-do list app, you go, oh, a list, an array, that's helpful. Or you go, oh, objects. Yeah, to-do list is going to have multiple things associated with it. And so we're going to kind of just layer in complexity. But the good news is we're going to start from scratch and go through project planning before we even start creating files. So that is the goal for this week. But I do want to not break in stand-up tradition. So what is something, instead of, what did you do yesterday or what did you do last week? What is something that you're proud of that you've done in the past week?
I stuck with it and didn't give up, even though I'm behind. I mean, I don't want to quit anyway, but I didn't.
Definitely something to be proud of. Anyone else want to chime in? Any concepts that you got last week where you were like, oh, that's how they do it, or man, I can't wait to do more of that?
Well, for me, right before you said that, I was just going to say that one of my biggest hurdles is asking for help. I like to try to figure out things on my own all the time, and I will spend an extra 20 hours to figure it out. And for me, I'm proud of myself for reaching out, even though I was a little bit like, oh, I don't even want to let them to see where I'm at right now. I'm behind or something. And two people were instrumental in helping me and getting me on the right track. So I just want to say, for anybody who's worried, the help is there. Don't worry, just jump in. You see Dana's got like super late hours. Other people have hours. Just seek help.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, definitely reach out. And to go back to that job thing I was saying, one thing that makes a junior developer become a senior developer is knowing when a junior developer is going down a rabbit hole. This rabbit hole is a notion that I catch myself going down, and I'm going, I spent 4 hours on this bug that I thought was going to take me 10 minutes to build out, and so definitely reach out for help. If you feel like your wheels are spinning at all, that's when just throw it out in the Slack channel, right? And a mentor may jump in and give you an answer. Also, feel free to rely on each other. I know that it's hard in this remote network, But all it takes is one person to say, hey, I'm working between this time and this time. If anyone wants to join me and work on the homework together, virtually at Common Space, whatever it is, reach out and lean on each other, because you'll make a couple friends in the program and really be able to feed off each other's progress. And I know Karen has been a huge proponent of meeting in person and working on study groups. So even if you don't, all it takes is one person to say, hey, anyone around this weekend for a study group, and you can be amazed at what you guys get done together. Any questions about where we are headed, either in the next 2 weeks or even the whole program?
Sure, let's talk about it. What's going on over the next 2 weeks?
So next 2 weeks is we're going to start on some JavaScript fundamentals. The thing that I want to make sure we get down in the first day or two is pace. I want to make sure that I'm going at a pace where all of you guys feel like you can either code along or that you can really understand the concept. So when you go to make this code, you really understand it. So this week is all about syntax is important, and getting on top of syntax and being able to write it all on your own, all important. But the thing that I really want you guys to get out of this week and definitely next week as well is the why am I writing that code? Like, I understand what the code does, I understand what a loop is, all of that, but why are you doing that, right? So if I write any line of code, if I, any questions that you have, feel free to interrupt me, unmute your mic, throw it in the chat, whatever it is, just ask, why are you doing it? So what we're going to start with in a couple minutes is the project planning, right? This week at work, I'm spending the entire 40+ hour work week planning for my team's next 9 months. And everything that they're going to do in the next 9 months, I am now planning out in a project management tool. And that is just part of the fun of being a developer, is sometimes you need to plan things out before you dive into it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about project requirements. We're going to start to think about what a to-do list app needs to do. Then we are going to write down all of the steps that it's going to take to make that app. From there, whether you do it in a Trello board, we're going to do it in a Google Doc just so we can kind of brainstorm and throw things out. From there, that's when we're going to dive in. But because we have that plan, now we are actually crossing things off the list. We feel ourselves making progress, and we know exactly where we are in the project as we're going through it. So I think some of you guys are further ahead in your capstones than we expect you to be, and that's great. So I would take your progress with, don't get too worried about falling behind. And definitely reach out to a mentor, because the mentor is going to be able to help some reassurance as well. And the answer to what is coming after me, Joey is going to come in and start teaching about React. React is a way that you can write your JavaScript code integrated more tightly with your HTML code. So it really allows you to build a more interactive website much easier than if you used what is called vanilla JavaScript or plain JavaScript. From there, Gus is going to come in, and no, not Gus. It is, I forget who teaches it. There's a section on the internet of how information travels over the internet, how you can make web calls on your own. How you can build all of that data in so you can pull data and send data from your apps.
I think that's Ryan.
That sounds right. From there, I come back in to cover Node.js, and we start getting to work in the server. And Gus and I share that module and the next module, which is databases. So how do I store data? How do I retrieve that data? How do I get that data to show up in my website? And at that point, we've really traversed the whole stack. And then we wrap up the program with security and there's one or two other modules that we've tacked on the end, which are super helpful and make you more of a well-rounded developer. Oh, DevOps is one of them. So how do I have this code on my computer? How do I get it on the internet? How I have my backend server and it's running on my computer. How do I tell Amazon, hey, here's my code. I would like you to run this. So I don't know, I can turn off my computer and make sure the code is still running. And so that's a module that's coming up as well. Any questions? Anything? Anything where you're like, why hasn't this been covered yet? Or is this going to be covered? Anything like that?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
26 weeks in the program, correct?
Yes.
Divided into how many modules?
14.
Okay.
I just pulled that number out of my, you know where, but it sounds right.
3.145, whatever. Okay, so some of them aren't showing up, you know, Google Classroom yet and stuff, so that's fine. The last couple weeks, does it still keep moving forward, or do we get time to just work on the capstone?
Yeah, I believe we saved the last week, and it may be the last 2 weeks for capstone work. And in cohort 1, it was great because it was like all hands on deck during capstone week. So there were nights that I was down at the tech garden until like 1 a.m. helping students get through their capstones. But all the mentors come back in, all the instructors come in. So it's like, I remember the night before the capstone, it felt like a Hack Upstate hackathon because someone would raise their hand and go, I'm stuck on this issue. And all the mentors would like converge on you and fight over who was the best one to help you solve that issue. And everyone had something to present at the demo day at the end of the program. So I know there's at least 1 week at the end saved for just capstone help. And there might even be 2.
Christian, not building it in 2 weeks, but also, you know, I know everyone is in the same boat and some people are in different places and handling it different or hiding how they're handling it or not hiding or whatever. But it's like the whole career piece. I can't even like think about that right now. You know, it's like, and I know how important that is. And they didn't have that in the first cohort, but I'm just feeling like there's way too much to do in too little time. But that's how it is. So here I go. You know, but I just was like, I didn't know if we get a chance to breathe like towards the very end, or we just, you know, crawl across the finish line or how it works.
The last time I looked at how things were mapped out with the curriculum, the last week, all hands will be on deck for capstone. And whether or not it's a breather probably just depends on how far along you are. So yeah, the very last week.
So I can tell you guys just from my experience, you know, it is an intensive program and some things have to give and not everybody is in the same situation. I was fortunate enough for me that, you know, like my husband and my kids were really willing to help because my house, like, forget it. I didn't do housework and I didn't cook either because I was working a full-time job and then I was going to class afterwards. And pretty much every waking minute that I had, I was spending on putting it into this program because that was my thing and I wanted to succeed in this and to be able to go through it. So somewhere something will end up giving and you may not want it to. I mean, I didn't want to take time away from, you know, my children and my husband, but for me, that was my sacrifice in order to get through. Now, in hindsight, that was probably the best thing for me that it was to give up in order to get through.
All right. Any other questions before we kick this off? So I am sharing a link in the CIC student C2. And I will also share that in the Zoom chat if I remember to send it to everyone. So it's just a blank document now. There's nothing in it. You don't have to have it open. I will also share my screen, but we're going to brainstorm requirements. So one thing it's important to separate out is the difference between requirements and this notion of a punch list, right? So requirements are, what does my app need to do? What do I need to program it to do? And then once you have that list, you can start going through what I call the punch list, right? Of what's the first thing I do? All right, I've got that done. Great. What's the next thing that I do, right? And the punch list, you want to be really detailed. The smaller you can get that broken down, the better it is. We're talking anything between 5 to 15-minute tasks. You want to get down to that granular level so you can track your progress, so you can feel like you're making progress. So I am guessing here, let me see if I can get everyone on the screen. Who here has either, who here uses a to-do list app or some kind of list tracking? All right, so when we think about a to-do list, not as a software developer, not as someone who is about to build one, as an actual user, what does a to-do list app need to do at a pretty basic level?
List out what you're trying to do, what you're trying to complete.
Yep. So let's say, sorry, I am.
Mel says bullets.
Yep. So you probably need to be able to create to-dos. You need to be able to list out to-dos as bullets.
Shah says list the task.
Yep. What else on a to-do list?
Deadline if there is one.
Susan
Deadline?
says check off done tasks.
Anyone else?
Latanya says measurable in some way, and Carolyn says keep the list items brief and to the point. Reminders, Susan said.
Maybe prioritize things?
Anyone else? Okay, so now I go through as a developer and I break what is called the project stakeholder's heart when I tell them what is now out of scope. Out of scope means we don't have the time to build it. And so creating to-dos, kind of a required thing. So that is what we would call a requirement for the MVP, the minimum viable product, right? We need the ability to create them. We need the ability to list them out as to-dos. There's one thing that you guys forgot, two things actually. We need the ability to update the name of the to-do, and we need the ability to delete them, because finishing a task and deleting a task aren't always the same thing. Deadline, I'm gonna highlight that as one that we might get to, because there's some fun date stuff in there. So I'll give that an orange. Check them off as done. I think that's kind of an MVP feature, right? Measurable. That's an interesting one. I'm going to put that one as a red. Probably won't get to that. That's just another data point that we could update our data store to save that information. Reminders. Great feature, one that is totally out of scope. And so what I will frequently do is I'll say, no, you can't have that, right? And of course, the knee-jerk reaction to telling someone no is, but I want it, why not? And so it's really important to be able to explain to whoever has these requirements of, well, reminders normally would come through as like a push notification on your phone, right? Well, in order to set up push notifications, we have to build a mobile app in order to be able to send you push notifications. At least on the iPhone, there's no way to send a user a message without having a mobile app. Or you could say, oh, I could do an email reminder. Well, an email reminder, an email has to be sent from a server. You can't send an email from just a website on its own that doesn't have a backend server. And so it's important to be able to explain to people, hey, these requirements that you have, it's a great idea, but here's the limitations that we have of the tech, where we don't have a server and we don't know how to use APIs yet in order to send an email out. And prioritize the list. This is a really good one. I'm going to mark this as an orange as well. So those are the oranges are the things. All right, we're going to come back to that. So got a good list here. Let me just shuffle these around so we have them. All right, no particular order on them, just grouping the oranges and the reds together. Okay, now we start thinking like a developer. What's the first thing we're going to have to do? Wireframe. After we wireframe, we are going to, someone said, Brandy, you said doc type. What is that doc type going into?
HTML.
Yeah, so we've got to create HTML files. And while we're at it, we probably are going to need CSS and JavaScript. And we've got to link those files together. Okay, now there are, someone said Mockup and Flowchart. Those are definitely good steps. We're even going to kind of skip the wireframing step and just start throwing content onto the page. So I definitely encourage you to wireframe and mockup. But for tonight, we are just going to get dummy data loaded into HTML. So what I want to do is I want to just bleh everything onto the page, right? It's not going to be functional. It's not going to be pretty, but we're going to get it working. Maybe tomorrow, depending on how fast we go on this, we can go back in and use Bootstrap to make the site a lot more pretty. But first, we need to get that list showing up in HTML. Okay, so we've got our code set up. We've got our 3 files. Everything's linked together. We've opened it up in the browser. We can see the dummy data. What's next? So go back.
Carolyn says testing.
Testing will be closer to the end. Let's go back to this list. Have we, in our punch list, have we made it so we can create to-dos? So think about how you would do that in HTML land. What kind of element will we need to add so people can type into the site?
List items, lists.
The list is showing them, but for actually creating them.
Wouldn't that be in JavaScript with arrays?
Latanya says input.
Input, yes. So we need the input HTML element, but then we will also need to use JavaScript to save the element. We'll just leave that vague for a moment. So yes, totally on the right track there. So, all right, now we've got our JavaScript to save the element, but just because it's in JavaScript, does that mean that we're going to be able to see it in the HTML? So we need to update our HTML to show to-dos in list. All right, so we're making good progress here. Let's check in. Can we create to-dos now? Yeah, we got that, right? We're using our JavaScript to save it. We've got our HTML element. Great. Okay, we've got list out to-dos as bullets. Well, we've got our update our HTML to show things. So that's good. All right, what about edit the name of the to-do? Got to add that, right? So how do you think we're going to add the ability to edit something? Think about websites. When you go to let is a let is a good thing. Yep, we're going to have to be using those. And inputs. In order to get that input to show up, we are going to add button to prompt for new name, right? Carolyn, we won't use a console log for that directly because we're going to be working with HTML and making this an interactive page. But we'll definitely be using console.logs to take a peek under the hood and see how the JavaScript is working there. All right, so if we add a prompt.
Wouldn't you need buttons to create the to-dos as well?
Yeah, so input
and
HTML element. I'm going to just add that right here, input and button HTML. Okay, so if we're adding a button for the new name, what else do we need a button for? And to create?
Delete.
Yep.
Oh, and checking them off as done. That would be a checkbox.
Okay. And let's see, we'll skip out the planning for our feature. So the client came to me and said, all right, I've got this to-do list. I need to be able to create, read, update, and delete the tasks. That acronym is known as CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. And those are operations that you see all the time in your code. So when my boss comes to me and goes, oh, I need this added to the software, I need the ability to create this new thing, I go into my project management software, my Trello or whatever you're using, and I create a task for create, read, update, and delete, right? Because all four of those are things where if I ship that out, and I have done this before, I go, all right, I need to create something, and now I need to make sure that we can see what got created, and then I ship the software out. And my boss goes, I made a typo. How do I fix that? And I go, oh crap, I forgot to give you the ability to edit it, to update it, right? So I do that, and he goes, yeah, that's great, but I decided I don't want that anymore. And I go, oh crap, I forgot to delete. So whenever you're working with data, you want to think about those four operations: your create, your read, your update, and your delete. All right. Anything else that you guys are seeing in the project planning phase where you go, oh, that's definitely a step that we're going to need to complete, or, oh, this is something that we're going to need to do, anything like that? You guys have a better feeling of how we come up with that list? Cool. For the list out of the to-dos, we are going to do a bulleted list to start, and we're going to put some really ugly buttons after that bulleted list. And then one thing that we can add in down here is pretty it up with Bootstrap. And I'm going to highlight that one as an orange as well, because I think that will be a useful exercise for you guys. But if you think that you have had enough of Bootstrap and you totally get it, we're after functionality here, not after making it super pretty. But I do love going back in and showing how easy it is to make a to-do list actually look like an app with Bootstrap. So I'll add that to the list. All right, we ready to start? So I think we should get to the linking the files together and maybe a little bit of the dummy data loaded in, and then we'll take a break. Sound good for everyone? Cool. So I am going to open my VS Code. And I purposely did not code this out in advance. I'm gonna try and talk through every line as I do it, so you guys see the process. You can follow along with it. So there are no cheats to this one. Okay, so. Can you guys see my VS Code? Okay. So I am going to open a workspace file open workspace, and I am going to go to my desktop, and I want to find the My Code folder. So I think I have mine in CIC and My Code. So however you have your folders organized, that is fine. We're not creating this in the classroom repo, and you don't have to pull the code because there's no example code for this, right? We're starting from scratch. So I'm going to find wherever I've been putting my code. I'm going to proactively organize, and I'm going to do one for module 4. And in module 4, I'll call this to do, and I'm going to create all my files in there. Wherever you put your files is completely fine. Just make sure you know where you're putting them and how you can get back to them. Okay, so I am going to not open that because it doesn't want to let me open that workspace. So I'm going to cancel and go to File Open instead, and then go to my desktops, my projects. I'm going to go to my careers in code. I'm going to go to My Code, module 4, to do, and open. All right, we made it. What is the first step on my second step on my Google Doc? First step now. Index file. Yep. Create my index.html. So I just right-clicked here and I said new file, and I said index.html. All right. Now, before we go on to the next step, we have to do the important step of coming back to our to-do list, and we're gonna cross it off, right? We get in the habit of saying, all right, that seemed like a minor step, but we're gonna keep track of what we're getting done. So when we get stuck, we can go back and say, yeah, but look at all this other stuff we were able to do. So I'm gonna go in and I am going to cross it off. Okay, what's next? Our CSS and our HTML. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to do my style.css, and I'm going to do my script.js. File names don't matter as long as you're being consistent. All right, so I go back here, create CSS and JS. Done. So I'm going to cross that off. All right, link all the files together. So at this point in the program, I'll kind of let it slide. I'm going to go to my index and use my exclamation mark trick and hit tab, and it's going to fill everything in for me. And that's all right, as long as we can tell you, you could tell me what every single line is doing in here, right? You need the ability to go in here and say, doc type HTML is telling the browser, hey, HTML is coming your way. Adding the HTML tag is saying everything coming inside this tag is going to be HTML. The head tag is saying, hey, browser, you're not going to show any of this, but here's some information that I would like you to parse. Meta UTF-8 is saying, hey, I would like the ability to use emojis. UTF-8, one of the major reasons it came out was to support non-English characters, but UTF-8 is also known for supporting emojis. XUA compatible, i.e. equals Edge, is just telling old browsers, hey, geezer, heads up that there's some information that you need to tweak in my HTML. Meta name viewport with device width initial scale 1.0, super important because otherwise your mobile phone is going to say, oh, this is a desktop website. I should show this super tiny on the screen and try and fit everything on it. And what this device width initial scale is saying is, hey, I've thought about mobile. Try and reformat this website to display in a mobile friendly way. And then title document, this is what is going to show up in the tab name. So if I've got multiple tabs open, I can do that. All right, body tag, that's what's going to show up in the body, right? That's what the user is going to see. And then we have our closing body tag and our closing HTML. Quick review for you guys, but good to know what all of that is doing. All right, so where do we link our CSS? In the head, you got it. So we're going to come up here. We're going to do a link tag. I'm going to use VS Code as my friend, and I am going to link href. Is it bad that I don't actually remember what the syntax is? And the rel is going to be style sheet. And then what else do I need to link? My JavaScript. You got it, Shaw. So I'm going to do that after my body tag. The reason I'm going to do my script source down there is because if I put it above my body, there are some browsers that will actually not show your HTML until it has loaded the script tag in. So the reason we put it at the bottom is to say, show everything up first and then worry about making it interactive, as opposed to putting it all the way up at the top or even in the head, where the browser will look at that and go, oh no, I've got to figure out all this JavaScript before I show any HTML. So I'm going to throw my script.js in there, and I am going to close out that script tag. Phobelia, I'm not going to use normalize yet because we aren't really worried about making this pretty. We're going to focus on functionality first. And then when we go back in to clean it up, if I wasn't using something like Bootstrap, totally would use normalize because I would be fighting with defaults a lot less. Bootstrap does have its own version of normalize built in or uses normalize itself. So I'm not going to use that yet, but only because I'm not worried about making it pretty. Okay, what's next? So let's go back. We're going to cross off linking our files together. And I believe it was Shaw who threw out an important step that I said, oh no, we're going to do all of that at the end. Well, we kind of need to test that. So we're going to add test links to our list. And that is a natural part of planning, right? That is just something that I forgot about, but it's an important thing to test now. And the reason it's important that we test now is I know that we have a break coming up. And so I can't tell you how many times I've come in, the next day and looked at my code and gone, who the hell wrote this code? And of course it was me, but I left myself no notes. And so I come back in and I go, what was I working on? So right now, if my internet just crapped out and I came back tomorrow, I would be able to go to my list and go, oh, we were about to load in dummy data, but before I load in dummy data, I need to test that all those files are together. Good practice to just test everything before you leave. And even if it's not all working, just leave yourself notes in your code or in your to-do list app or wherever works for you. Just jot down where you're at. Because you come in the next day and you go, oh, thank you, past me, for thinking of future me. All right, so let's test out some of these links. I am going to go in here. I am going to create an H1 tag called Hello World. I will save that. I'm going to go to my style sheet up at the top, and I'm going to target my H1, and I will make the color pretty pink. And I'll save that, and I'll go to my script tag. And what am I going to put in the script tag? What's the easiest thing to see in JavaScript? Bet you're all overthinking it. An alert is actually a good answer. Console log is what I was thinking of. Either one would totally work. And so to prove that, we can do hello world, and then we can do a console.log. This is in the console. Either
Can you
one.
make your text bigger?
Oh, yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so index, all I did is I threw in my H1. Everything else was boilerplate except the link tag and the script tag. In my style sheet, I just threw an H1 in there that says color pink. And in my script tag, I did an alert and a console log. Either one are great ways of testing out your code. Okay, so I'm going to right click here, and I am going to reveal this in Finder. And I'm going to double click on my index.html. Immediately, I get my alert, hello world. So I know my JavaScript file is linked. I hit OK, and I've got my pink hello world text. So I know my style sheet is linked. And if I go to my inspect and pop open my console, I see this is in the console. So all of that is linked. So if you guys are following along with me, I would encourage you to get to this point before you take your break. If you are just listening and want to do this as a homework assignment after class, that is also completely fine. The finished version of this to-do list app will be a homework. I haven't decided if it's the weekend project or we'll have to see how long it's taking. But I'm going to stick around here in case anyone has questions or doesn't have files linked or is having any issues. Otherwise, I will see you guys back here around 7:10, 7:15. And Alina, great point, coding along. It's great muscle memory. It's great to practice the syntax. And some of that syntax, like you see how fast we type and you're like, how are they going so fast? It's because we've been doing it for years and years. And I know where every curly brace is on the keyboard and all the weird arrows and all of that stuff. So the good news is it does get better at typing syntax. But I'm going to shut up now and I will let anyone ask questions or go take their break. And I will leave my index code up in case anyone needs that.
Max, I was going to ask, could I just see your CSS code again real quick?
Sure.
Please?
Yep.
Thank you.
All I have in there is a H1 in curly braces and then a color pink.
Very simple. I was putting way too many things in there. Thank you. That's where I'm having trouble is putting those two together. It's like, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Excuse me, Max, can you show your JS real quick?
Sure can.
It worked for me, but I got a syntax error. I forgot my semicolon after that. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right, in that case, I'm going to go get myself some coffee that I'm going to regret.
Excuse me, Max.
Yes.
This is Latonia. Do we have time to do that Slack question?
Yeah. So I know how you fix it from the admin side.
Mhm.
I don't think no, I'm not an admin. Let me message Jesse.
Okay.
Um,
And this may sound like a weird question, but so I've been sending questions and not getting responses, and I'm wondering if they were going to that other account. And so I'm wondering if like it's deleted, if they'll pop over, or should I just consider them gone? Okay.
consider them gone. Yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately. Let me just make sure that you're yeah, let me message Jesse and see if I can get that resolved.
Okay, I appreciate it. And are you planning on moving there, or you just wanted to have the mini? Okay, you just wanted the experience.
I'm considering doing a tiny house full time, and actually having a custom one built. But it was one of those things where I thought that I should try living in it for more than a week to see, because it's one of those things where I think you can vacation in one of them and be like, oh man, this is awesome. Like I love the concept of being able to move your house. And then, you start to cook in it, or you start realizing that the micro fridge is really not a functional thing, or like whatever it is. So I just got down here last night, and I'll be here for the whole month of May. So it will be a fun journey for sure.
That's awesome.
Is there a question that I can possibly help with?
No, I think everyone is good.
Oh, okay. I haven't been paying attention to the chat, but okay. I just thought maybe there might be something that I could answer.
Nope, we're good.
All right. Thank you.
So Max, my
Yes.
files aren't happy in the integrated console.
We won't be using the VS Code console at all for this project.
Okay.
Because we're going to do everything through the browser and make things interactive that way.
Okay.
The terminal, you'll definitely start using a lot more when you get into server-side development. But you'll also be using that a little bit with Joey and with React.
Okay.
With that said, I can help you straighten that out now if you want, or after class.
If there's time, I mean, I don't want to, this is the kind of thing I keep bumping into. I keep thinking I get it. I do it the way I think it's supposed to be done. And then it comes and slaps me in the face and says, sorry.
Go ahead and share your screen and let's see what we can do.
All right. So I got the 3 files here. Let me go. All right. So here's my index file. And I did the node thing. And here's what I got, a whole series of, errors and the usual.
Okay, so
I got to move this out of the way so we can see. Unexpected.
Yeah, so what are the 2 letters that commonly follow node? What kind of code does node run?
Usually, well, you do node in the file name.
Right, but what kind of code does node execute? It's not a trick question.
React, Node, JavaScript.
JavaScript.
So one of those guys, they're all related.
Node is also the shorthand of node is Node is shorthand. Node is really Node.js,
Okay.
right? And all Node does is all it runs is JavaScript. In fact, it's so much in love with JavaScript that it
Oh.
will not run any CSS and it won't run any HTML. So
That explains it.
if we scroll up a little bit, we passed in, if you go up to the top, you always start reading error messages from the top down.
Yep.
Because it is very easy to start at the bottom or even in the middle and go, oh my God, what is happening with wrap safe at node internal with CJ? Like, what is happening there? But really, when we look at it, it's saying it isn't even getting to the D in doc type. It's going, what the hell is that arrow doing? That's not JavaScript. I'm confused. That doesn't. So all we need to do is if we scroll down to the bottom
of
your terminal
error. Okay.
What we're going to do instead is say, click in the terminal and then type in node. And instead of passing it the HTML, we're going to say script.js. Okay. And so this goes back to why we're not using Node is because alert is something that only shows up in the browser. And so it's like alert. I can't alert. I'm in the terminal. I don't know what a user interface is. So we can go back to our script.js file at the top.
I got this Facebook thing in the way. Okay, here we go.
Okay. And just click on line 1. And then hit command and slash.
Slash.
Next to the right shift key by period.
Oh, slash. I thought you said flash.
Sorry, slash.
So under the question mark.
Yes.
The
and
forward
that's just a shortcut to comment out that line of code.
Right.
So you could put the 2 slashes in there manually. But the nice thing is that you could hit that again and it would remove the comment as well. So it's a nice quick way to comment things in and out, even if you have multiple lines selected. So go ahead and comment that out again and save your file. And then if we hop down to your terminal, we can hit the up arrow key and then enter. And there you go. Now it's saying line 1 commented out, ignore it. Oh, console log. I know what the console is. I use that all the time. And so it printed that out. So the good news is
but not in pink.
But not in pink because it went style sheet. What is the style sheet? And so you're all caught up, but just for the sake of the recording, we won't be using the terminal at all for this project because we're interacting everything in the browser.
See, and that's what's been happening with my capstone. I've been using. Okay.
You're there. We will definitely be doing things in the terminal to make your capstone run. And all of Node.js and the server-side code will be done through the terminal. And all of React, in order to get React to work, we actually need to run a server to have the React code up and running. So we'll be using the terminal for that. With that said, no terminal today and probably no terminal tomorrow.
I'll reform myself. Gus whipped us into shape.
All good.
No, that explains it. I'm like, see, I can't do this stuff because it's already. All right. That's why it's okay. Thank you. I got to go get some milk or something. I'll be back. Was there a limit on the break?
7:15, we'll regroup.
Oh, you're so kind. All right. So, nice little chance to catch my breath. All right, I shall return. Thank you. I'll mute, sorry.
everyone a minute to get back, and then we will get back to work. All right, want to pump the brakes here. Is anyone behind who is following along, or does anyone have look at any lines of code in either the HTML, the CSS, or the script tag and want to know what it's doing?
Now that you helped me out with that console log snafu, I'm much better.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a good reminder for everyone of we aren't running this in the terminal. And we aren't running this in Node because we're not doing anything server side. Everything that we're going to be doing is we're going to be executing in the browser. Most JavaScript code you can either run in the browser or in the server, and the server that we happen to be using is called Node or Node.js. So the only reason why we're not using Node is because all of the code that we're going to be interacting with is in the browser. That's not to say that Node is a bad way of testing your JavaScript code, and we will definitely be using Node more in later modules. The reason why Gus probably taught you guys Node early on is to get your JavaScript working in a vacuum. So you don't have to worry about what the browser is doing or getting it to show up on the web page or any of that stuff. It lets you just say, here's this chunk of JavaScript code, please run this JavaScript code, and I don't have any HTML or CSS to go with it. The reason why we're doing this JavaScript in the browser is because we're going to make a web page, and we're going to make that web page interactive, and that's why we're running our JavaScript over there.
So question, Max, when we talk about linking pages.
Yep.
We have these 3 files in one folder. Are they now linked?
They are, but only because we put in this script tag and we put in the link tag.
Okay.
So there are multiple definitions or versions of what a link is. We use the link tag, so they're definitely linked somehow. We have told our HTML, hey, when you're processing this HTML, go to this link and go to this script link and pull that in and execute that code. So yes, I would definitely say that they are linked, but to your Mac doesn't know that those are linked, right? It doesn't care. Those are just 3 independent files. The only thing that it knows is linked is your browser when it actually runs this code. Any other questions before we get back to work? All right. So we're back. I have no idea what we're doing. Oh, I have my list. That's right. We were getting dummy data loaded into HTML. Okay. So when we think about dummy data, the point of it is just to get our content out onto our HTML, right? So I'm going to change my hello world here to say my to-do list app. And then I want a couple to-do list items to show up. And so what HTML tag am I going to use for that? UL, you got it, Shaw. UL stands for unordered list, yes. And we're going to use list items. You were right, Dominique, for that. LI, list item. And I'm going to say, finish this app. And I'm going to say, learn more awesome JS. And I'm going to do third one that says, this purposely has type yo in it. Just setting us up for the future. All right, so let's save this. I'm going to hop back over to my browser. I'm going to be in the right tab here. I'm going to refresh, and I have this page says hello world and my to-do list in pink, and it's not looking pretty. So let's go in and clean up our code a little bit. I'm going to remove my H1 because right now I don't want any additional styles. And I'm going to delete out my JavaScript files for now because we've already proven they're linked. We'll come back to them later. So I'm going to save that again. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to refresh, and I've got some dummy data in there. So what's the next step? It's a trick question. Anyone want to try and answer it?
Check the list.
Not only do we check the list, we cross the thing off that we just finished on the list. All right, so I'm going to, nope, I did that wrong. Format text. Okay. I got my dummy data loaded in, right? I got a couple tasks loaded in there, so I'm good to go. So now we have to get our input and button HTML element. And this is a great example of breaking this down, right? Because you could look at this item on our requirement and say, create to-dos. Well, you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do all of that? Creating my to-dos, do I start in the JavaScript? Do I start, where do I start, right? And so this is a great example of, well, there are really 3 tasks here, right? There's the input and the button, and we got to get that to show up in the HTML. Then we've got to get our JavaScript to be able to have the list and save it in there. And then we need to get our HTML to update with all of that information, right? So unless you break it down to that level in your project planning, it's very easy to be like, I've got no idea where I would even start with that. But because we have it broken down, we go, oh, an input and a button, we know how to do that. So I'm going to hop over to my HTML. I'm going to come outside my unordered list, right? Because I don't want this to show up in as a bullet. And what am I going to create? Button comes second. Before we do the button, we do the input.
Right.
And what kind of input do we want?
Button input or text.
Text to start. Okay. And then we can even get fancy and put a placeholder on there that says enter to do here. And maybe we'll say enter new to do here, just to provide user input. We will save that. We will come over, we will refresh it. And there's my text box. Not pretty, but you know what? It's functional. What isn't functional is no way to submit it. So we are going to do a button, and the type is going to be submit. And I am going to say add to do. So we save, we come over, we refresh, and there's my add to do. So we go back to our list. We have an input button and an input and a button HTML element. So what do? We cross it off. What's next? Use JS to save the element. Okay. So how do we do that? We are going to use a form to do that. So I'm going to create this form tag here and get my indentation correct. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to say form, and when we say on submit of the form, go look for this JavaScript function called add new task. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to my app, and I have my console open. Remember to refresh the page, and I'm going to type in test and hit add to do. What just happened? I'm going to type it in again and hit add to do, and it's just, there's some red that popped up in the console, but then it went away. Well, what's happening is 2 things here. One, it is looking for add new task, and it's like, what the hell is add new task? You never told me what add new task is. So I have no idea what to do. But you want to submit the form? All right, I'll submit that form to this same page, and it will just go away. We're like, Well, we don't want you to refresh the page, right? When you think about when you fill out a form online and you submit it, right? That normally takes you to another page. But we're like, we don't want you to do that. We're going to handle that interactivity. So we've got to fix both of those issues. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell add new task. And so what HTML is doing is it's looking in our CSS for a function called add new task. And so I can come in here and say alert, code is here, and save that and pop open my Chrome. Remember to refresh the page, type something in and hit add to do, and it's still not doing anything. Okay, so what we need to do is come into our code and say, hey, add new task. HTML is going to give you this thing called event. And what we would like you to do is prevent the default event from happening. And that is the submission of the form and refreshing of the page. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my code. I've got a bad feeling it's not going to work, and I'm going to have to live debug. And it's not working. Okay, so let's debug a little bit. We've got our function in here. Let's make sure our JavaScript is still working. So I'm going to add a console log hi. I'm going to go back in my browser. I'm going to refresh, and hi came out. So we know our JavaScript code is running, but there's something going on with that form where the form isn't lining up with our JavaScript. So I'll remove my hi because we don't need that. I'm going to go to my index. Function add new task, add new task. So the names are matching. Do I need parentheses there? So we were seeing that error message flash up really quickly. So I'm going to use a more advanced tool. I'm going to go into the settings here, and I'm going to check this thing that says preserve log. And what preserve log is going to do is it's going to say, even if the browser tells you to clear when you reload the page, don't clear the log out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit test. And what it says is cannot read property, prevent default of undefined. Okay, that's helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my code, and I'm just going to swap these two and see what happens. I'm going to put my event in first. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to refresh my page. I'm going to type something in. I'm going to hit add to do. And all of a sudden, I get my code is here. All right, so that's progress. The function is linked up. My HTML is looking at the right spot in my HTML, in my JavaScript, I'm sorry. But if I hit OK, it's still refreshing the page as soon as I'm done the alert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to test the theory. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to remove my parentheses. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to make sure my alert is still first. And when I run my code, it's not working. Okay, so those parentheses are important. We've got to tell it, hey, when you are looking for add new task, we've got to tell it, hey, that's a function. So we're going to add those parentheses because the parentheses afterwards say run that function, run that code. And then in here, I'm going to try and pass event. I'm going to try and tell my form, hey, when you add the new task, pass in that special event thing. So I'm going to go back to my script tag. I'm going to say, make sure my event is there. Everything looks good there. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type in my test. I'm going to click on add to do. I get my code is here, and I hit OK. Oh, it stayed. I didn't get any error down here, and I'm good to go. So my button is running, and I can go back over here, and I can make my prevent default happen first now that we have it working, and I can console log new task. Oh, don't forget your quotes. New task submitted. And I'm going to pop back over here. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type in test. I'm going to hit add to do, and I get my new task submitted. If I click the button again, I see that little 2 there. Okay, what step is next? Let's go back to what task we were working on. Well, we need to use JS to save the element. Well, we're on the right path. We have our HTML and our JavaScript linked right now, right? So there's some information that when something happens in our HTML, our JavaScript is aware of it. That is called an event. And so we're using the on submit event to access the button being clicked. What do we need to do to save that information? Well, in order to save information, we kind of need to know what was being submitted, right? And so what we need is in our JavaScript, we need the ability to get this thing that the user typed in called test. So we need, not only is HTML saying, hey, JavaScript, this button was clicked, the JavaScript needs a way to say, hey, HTML, what was typed in there? So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our HTML, and in our input, we are going to add an ID. And the ID we are going to add is, let's just call it new task field. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my script. And in here, I can remove my console log because I know that's working. I'm going to say const form field, right? Because we're not going to change the form field at all. We're just creating a variable so we can access it down the road. And then we're going to use a special word called document. Document is kind of like this, or function, or let, or const, or any of the reserved words in JavaScript. It is saying, hey, the document is the variable that I'm running this script in. So when I say document, I'm actually referencing this HTML document. And it knows what the document is because we put the script tag in there. So the JavaScript is kind of bridging that divide and giving me this magical thing called document. I will post this, guys. Let me post it now so you guys are keeping up. But I will add this to the GitHub repo at the end of class. So Mel, the document will always be whatever document the script is running on. So if you had 3 script files and you were running those on 3 separate HTML pages, whatever page the HTML script is running in is what will be the document. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to add in this one last step, and then I'll pump the brakes a little bit and let you guys ask any questions. So I am going to say document, and I'm going to use a separate, a special command called get element by ID. And what that is doing is it's saying, all right, go to my HTML, and that's what the document part is, and literally get this element by the ID we tell you. And so VS Code's helping me out here. It's saying, oh, the parameter, right? Because get element by ID is a function. How do we know it's a function? Well, it has some parentheses after it. Okay, well, VS Code's helping us out. It's saying get element by ID. Oh, you need to pass in the element ID and pass that in as a string. And then it's even telling us string that specifies the ID value returns a reference to the first object with the specified value of the ID attribute. So those little pop-ups, they can be annoying, but they also can be very helpful. So I'm going to go back to my HTML. I am going to grab the ID called new task field. I'm using camel case here because we don't like spaces. We're going to go into our script tag. I'm going to put that in quotes. and I'm going to put a semicolon. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to my code. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type in test, click add to do, and nothing. Anyone have an idea of why it's not doing anything? Let's look at our code. Someone want to take a stab at what each line is doing? All right, let's go in and add comments, right? We're saying a function, right? So block of code, right? A logical grouping of code in a function. And we are saying we're naming the function and saying that event will be passed in as a parameter, right? And so that's, break it down literally word by word. Function is just telling JavaScript, heads up, we're going to send you some code. We have to name the function. So we're going to call it add new task. And then the parentheses mean some data is going to be passed in as a parameter. What's going to be passed in? This event, when this add new task runs, the browser is going to pass this thing in called event. Then we're going to have some curly braces, and those curly braces are going to say what's going to run in this function, because as soon as I hit that last curly brace, I know any other code isn't going to run whenever we click that button.
Susan said because we don't have any place to send it, and Shah said you need to return.
Exactly. So the event prevent default is just saying prevent that initial page refresh from happening. Then we're saying, hey, go get the form field. And we're going to store it in a const because we're not going to change the form field itself. And we're going to name form field. And what is that going to equal? What's that going to store? Okay, go back to the HTML document, call this function called getElement.byId that's built into document, and get the new task field. And so JavaScript said, all right, it's in form field. Right? You got it. But we didn't do anything with it. So we could return it, but we want to console.log it. And what I'm going to do is console log out just the form field. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to my Chrome. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type something in. I hit add to do. And now that input shows up. Well, that input is great, but it's input type text, placeholder, ID. Test doesn't show up anywhere in there. What I would like is the value of the form field. And so we have the form field, and we know we have the form field because it's console logging out, but we need the value, what's actually typed into that form field. So I save, I go to Chrome, I refresh, I type in test, I hit add to do. And there is my test. So we've got not only our HTML with the onSubmit event linking into our JavaScript and executing a function, we have that function telling the event, stop what you're doing. I know you're trying to help, kind of like the CSS normalize, right? We're like, we don't want your default event. So just prevent that from happening. Then we say, hey, HTML, I would like that input because I need to get some more information from it. And we store that in a thing called form field. So it would be a little easy for us to reference down the road. Then we come down to our console log and we say, get the value from the form field. And that's what we print out. Now, this code is also going to work perfectly fine. We could take document.getElementById and access the value on that directly. So I can comment this code out. Remember my parentheses. Go over here, refresh, that still works, right? So basically what we're doing, instead of chaining all of these things together with dots, I've got a gut feeling we're going to be interacting with that form field more. So I just shoved it in a variable called form field. So now whenever I say form field, it is referencing this document.getElement by ID. Take a break here. Gonna let people who would like to catch up. Gonna let the people who have questions, strongly encourage them to ask the questions. Like if, for instance, you got an error and would like to share what error you got, or share your screen.
Hey, Max, this is Latonia. Somehow my button broke. I can tell that the code is broke. Can you just show your index HTML? Maybe I can figure it out.
Yeah, and if you can't, definitely share your screen, because debugging is just as important to learn in the boot camp as writing this code on your own. So what I have here, let me shrink that down at all. No. Susan, if you want to just send what error you got in the chat, or in Slack, that works too. Okay, cannot read property value of null. So what that sounds like a very scary error message, but basically what it's saying is I'm looking at form field, and form field is null. It's empty. It doesn't exist. So I can't get the value of something that doesn't exist. So what it's trying to tell you is something is wrong with this document.getElement by ID. And getElement by ID is returning null because it can't find that ID. It can't find it in the document. And that's why it's throwing an error at value, because it's saying, I can't get a value of something that's empty. So what I would do is look at your getElement by ID.
Yeah,
and
it's
make
spelled. I
sure-
totally spelled it. I didn't do it. Camel case. That's why.
Yep, that will do it.
Yeah. Let me see
Something
if I fix
as
it.
simple as having a space right here will also break it, right? So
Yep.
like every letter matters.
All right. Let me see.
Go for it, Latonia.
Okay, that worked.
Excellent.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks. Yep.
Add new task event ID. Oh, I see a problem.
Where?
Use your colors to your advantage. So
Okay.
you see how ID is blue?
ID. Where am I in index?
In your index, yep.
Okay.
The-
ID is
Yep.
blue. Yes.
And then new task field is purple.
Yeah.
But what else is purple?
My button type.
Yeah, that's weird. Your button type shouldn't be purple that far. It knows where to start the purple. It doesn't know where to end the purple.
Oh.
So look at your ID.
ID equal. Is that an equal sign?
It's an equals, yep.
Equal new task field. And then I closed it. Was I not supposed to do that?
You closed the tag. Did you close the string?
Oh. Oh. Thank you.
And so I go through that step by step, not to chastise you, but
No,
just
it's
to get the practice of, looking for those little things and the colors actually trying to help you out there.
Yeah, and that's good because when we relook at the code, we always feel like we saw everything. It matched up right, and still we're, well, I'm saying we, but missing that stuff. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else?
Yes, when I refresh my page, the text that I put in the box doesn't clear out.
Do you have it so when you click the button, it shows up in the console?
Hmm?
Go ahead and share your screen. Well, let's take a look.
So this is the document, but this is the page.
Okay.
And when I do this, nothing.
So right, yep, go into your inspect. Yeah, you got it. And go to the console and click add to do. The button that you have added. Yep. And it is console logging out. So we actually haven't written the code yet to clear out that input. So you are completely caught up.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Oh God, it's hard.
All right, anyone else? Mel, I saw you move quickly. You have a question?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen.
Sure. How are we feeling? Any questions about, even if you have it working, you don't have it working, you're not following along? Is there anything in the code so far where you're like, he explained it and I still do not get what that code is doing? Or why is that syntax there? Or anything about the code whatsoever? And you'll have a chance to answer that as soon as we're done with Mel. Good, glad to hear that, Latonia. Mel, can you stop your screen share and start it again? There's a weird glitch in Zoom sometimes where we can't see the window. And we still can't see it. Did you go to system preferences and check off the allow screen sharing? It's this weird thing where we can see your desktop, but we can't see the application that you're in. And I don't remember how to fix that. It's not anything you were doing wrong. In the meantime, if you want to copy and paste your code into Slack, I can take a look at that. Karen, if you're saying yours did the same thing when you were screen sharing, are you talking about earlier tonight with just the Finder window? So Mel, all of your HTML looks good. Are you okay? Here's your JavaScript. All of that looks right as well. So when you go to your browser, do you have the console open at the bottom? And are you getting an error or what is happening? Oh, you know what? I bet the error you're getting is cannot read prevent default of undefined or of null. So good catch by Dominique. Console is spelled wrong in the last line of the function. And then the other thing you'll want to do is in your form on submit tag where it says add new task, go ahead and put the word event in there. And that should get you running. If it doesn't, feel free to ping us in either Slack or the Zoom chat. Okay, Shaw had a request on the event prevent default. So let's go back into our code. Sometimes the best way of understanding what it's doing is to comment it out to remove it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, I refresh, I remove that event, the event prevent default. I just commented it out. And so what happens is I go in here, I type in ABC, I click, and it just disappears. And if you look close,
Excuse me, Max, you're not sharing.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. I commented out my event.prevent default here, right? Because I want to understand what that's doing. So I commented it out. I go into my Chrome. I refresh everything. I type in ABC and I hit add to do, and it disappears. And if you look closely at the refresh icon, you'll see for a split second, it loaded a page. And what the browser is doing there is it's trying to help us. And it's saying, oh, when you submit a form, the action that I do by default is reload the page because I'm sending that data somewhere, right? When you think about when you fill out a form on a web page, like a contact form, you put your name and your message in and all that stuff, and you hit the submit button and the page reloads and it says, thanks, we got your contact information. But we don't want it to do that because we're going to handle the interactivity right on the page. And so what's happening is we say, hey, index.html, when you call new task, also pass in the event that is happening. The event is the submit, is the actual action that is causing this code to run. And so the event has some things built into it. In fact, we can even go in here, and I'm going to add in my prevent default so we can snoop a little bit. But basically, the prevent default is saying the default action in the browser is submitting the page and reloading the page altogether. So we're saying prevent that default action. But if I wanted to, I could console log out the event itself. And when I refresh and submit something, you see this pop up in the console. And I can open this up and see all kinds of information that the browser is using under the hood to tell my JavaScript about the event that just happened in the HTML. One of the things is the submitter. So it's saying a button submitted the form. It's looking at the target of the event, which is the form, and the form has some information in here, like the input and the button of the form. It's got all kinds of information in here, like the timestamp. So we don't use any of this information. The only thing that we use is prevent default, and that just happens to be built in to this event object. So that's probably a little more under the hood than we care about. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to remove this console log. But whenever you want more information about a variable, console log it out, see what's in there. Oftentimes you can get a lot of interesting information in there. Other questions? Glad that helped, Shaw. All right, are we good to continue?
I'm sorry.
Nope, go for it.
I just have to go back into my couple of things. All right, you let's see, that's the JavaScript. So like with the style sheet, the two has to go with the HTML. There has to be something that connects the two. So if you're talking about color, you know, you have to say what color, what it is you're affecting with that color.
Yeah.
So with the JavaScript, we've got constant form field, etc. Get elements by ID, new task field, and then it's the same thing again. Anyway, I'm looking for some of those words in the HTML file.
Yeah, so the add new task, whenever we do this on submit, HTML knows what we're looking for is a function. Because in the JavaScript code, it's not something that is going to just run once. We want to be able to lump our code together and say, hey, when this submit thing happens, I want to be able to write a couple lines of code that's going to interact with that. And so whenever we think about code in groups in JavaScript, we call that a function, right? This function is going to execute. And when this add new task function executes, anything between this curly brace and this curly brace are going to run. And so the function is just telling JavaScript, hey, don't run this code yet. I don't want you to run this code until someone tells you to run it. And in this case, it's the HTML saying, oh, on submit, go find the function called add new task. And so it finds add new task over here and runs that. Now in our HTML, we say pass the event along. HTML doesn't have to do that. HTML could go, oh, I'll just run that add new task. But without the event getting passed, we can't tell our JavaScript to tell our HTML, stop reloading the page. We want to deal with that. Prevent that default action on the event. And so in our HTML, we pass in our add new task event. And that is a one-way link where HTML is sending that over to our JavaScript. It is finding this add new task function, and it is going to run whatever is in there.
Okay.
Now we work in reverse for this document get element by ID. Document's a special word that means, oh, go look at our HTML document.
Okay.
And get element by ID, that's something that's built into the document. What would you like me to search for in the HTML? Go find the ID called new task field. So now we are doing this whole thing in reverse. It knows what document it is in because we have the script tag, so it knows where it's running. And then it goes and it looks for the new task field ID.
So it's almost like a circle.
Yes.
So
Definitely full circle.
when the HTML is pulling in the function from the JavaScript file, it doesn't have to know all the stuff that's inside the function. It's what the function's called that it's looking for. And that's in the HTML code. Thank you. That clears up so much. Thank you.
And Susan, to show you what was happening here, this event thing was causing me problems, right? So initially I just took that out and I said, add new task. And so when I was in my code, if I refresh this and I type something in, if you look at my console for just a split flash of a second, it shows an error and then it goes away immediately because it's refreshing the page. So I went to gears here and I went to preserve log. And that's basically going to say when the page reloads, preserve the log, don't clear that out. So I'm going to go back in here. I do that again. And what happens is it's saving the navigated to information. So that's telling me, hey, I moved to a different page. So I can come back in here. And if I add my parentheses, now when I refresh and I type something in, it's going to say uncalled type error cannot read property prevent default of undefined. So whenever you see an error like this, Karen will attest to this is probably her world's favorite error because she gets undefined all the time. I think there was a 2-day period where she went, it's another freaking undefined. So they kind of throw you off a little bit, right? They're saying prevent default. So you go, oh, there must be an issue with prevent default. Let's look at our code again. The issue isn't with the prevent default itself. It's saying what it is trying to call prevent default on is undefined, right? When we do the period, we're saying, hey, on this event, that's what we would like to be prevented. But it is saying, I don't know what event is. And we can prove that because we can console log our event. And if we come over here and refresh and type something in, notice what comes out of our console, undefined. And then when it tries to do the prevent default, that's when it's going, I don't know what prevent default is because I don't know what the event is. And so the way we fixed that, one, we had to have preserve log checked. So the console wasn't clearing itself. And then two, we went over here, we deleted out, we don't need our console. Well, we can leave that in. We went to our index and we said, hey, when you add the new task, pass in the event that comes with it. And so now when we come over here and we refresh and we type in ABC, we see our submit event. Now it's complicated and there's a lot of information in there. The fact is that it is there. And because it is there, we now don't have that error on line 4, which was our prevent default.
Great. And one other question, are you, I know you're in the web browser dev tools. Are you in the JavaScript console?
Yes.
That
Yes.
would make a difference too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not in the right place tonight. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question about the word event. Is that just like a convention, or do you need that word for that functionality that you were showing when you were answering Shaw's question, where it had like the time stamp and all that?
Yep.
Because at first when you were doing this, I thought that's just the word you chose, and as long as the parameters all match up, it'll work. But
that is correct. Event is a concept in JavaScript. JavaScript is what is called an event-driven language, in that it is designed to execute code when something happens in the browser. With that said, event is a convention to either call it EVENT. Sometimes you will see EVT, and that will also work as long as you update. You notice it crossed it out here because it's like, I don't know what that is. So if we do EVT here and EVT here, and I save and I refresh and I type in my ABC, I'll still get my ABC here. So it is the order of the parameters that matters, not necessarily the name of it. The other convention, I will say, if you guys are looking at someone else's code, sometimes you see it just abbreviated to E. You will never see me use a single letter variable in any of my code. That drives me crazy. With that said, I know a ton of programmers that use that because they're like, E is such a common thing in JavaScript that E must mean event, so we'll just use that.
yeah, but we
drives
also
me
used
crazy.
that for error last week.
Yeah, it's
Error, so
that is part of the problem. So I will see EVT, I will see E. I prefer spelling it out because that is what makes the most sense to me.
but that timestamp and all that stuff you were showing, it would do that for any parameter that has nothing to do with the word event, though.
No, but it has to do with the order of the parameters. So
Right.
the first parameter is always the event. So if I change this to E and this to E, and I refresh and submit something, I still have access to the event and the timestamp and the target and all of that stuff.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But if I, had like a second, or if I called this first and second, first is going to have my event in it, second is not.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'm happy this is how class should go. If you guys have questions, throw it out. Like I'm gonna go fast until you guys say, whoa, what is this actually doing? So I'm happy. And even if someone's asked the question and they got the answer, feel free to ask the question again if you didn't understand the answer. That is why we are here. I'm fine if this project takes us all week to get through it. Right? I want to make sure that you guys are getting these basics because we've got a lot going on here, right? We're doing functions. We're talking about parameters. We're using the console. We've got events going on. We're using document to access the HTML. We're accessing properties on those variables. We're using const. Like, think about all the things Gus covered last week, and you were using almost all of them in 10 lines of JavaScript and 5 lines of JavaScript, right? So there is a lot building on each other here. And the good news is we are running out of new concepts to teach you. That is what I will get to next week. And there are only 2 or 3 of them. There were probably 15 or 20 that Gus taught last week. So you're reaching the end of your JavaScript, and now it is all about practice typing it and understanding what every single character is doing. So if you guys have questions, definitely ask them. Speaking of which, so Carolyn, if you come outside of your function and put a console.log in here that just says hi, make sure it's outside of that curly brace on the function, the closing curly brace, and save that, what's going to happen is if you go back to your console and refresh, you'll see that hi shows up. Now, the reason why you do that is twofold. If hi isn't showing up, then there's a problem linking your HTML to your JavaScript. Because that hi is outside of the function, that should always be showing up no matter what's going on in our JavaScript. So if it isn't, we know it's a problem with the link. If it is, we now know your JavaScript is linked up, but we know that there is an issue linking the button, the form submit, to your JavaScript itself.
Sorry, I'm looking at the code. I looked at what you had posted to Slack so I could make sure I filled in all the blanks for parts I didn't get. So I'm pretty sure it's all right. But then, when I load it in Chrome and I get the rendering of the page, but there's absolutely nothing in the console. So
and there won't be anything in the console until you type something in the form and click the button.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You probably just said the same exact thing, but I don't speak English. So, all right.
And so Latonia had a good question on why did I put the console log outside of the bracket as opposed to inside the bracket, right? I'm console logging all over the place. I'm inside and I'm outside. What's happening here is this curly brace is defining what the function is going to be. So it's saying whenever I run add new task, I want you to start at this opening curly brace and run everything to the outside of the curly brace, right? So it's not going to console log out the event. It's not going to prevent the event from happening. It's not going to get the form ID, and it's not going to console log out the value until I tell it to run add new task. And when I tell it to run add new task in the HTML, it is then going to console log, prevent the default, get the form field, and console log out the value. But because this is outside the function, it is going to run the first time I pull in my script.js, and then it will not run again. And so basically what we're doing is we're telling the HTML, run the code that is inside the function when I tell you to run the function. And then it is saying, if it is outside of a function, run it the first time the page loads and then do not run it again. So to give a better example of that, we console logged out our hi, right? And so if I come over here and I refresh the page, I don't have to click on anything. I just refresh and hi is there. Now, if I move that into a function called console hi, now that's in a function. So the JavaScript goes, oh, I'm going to remember what you want me to do when you tell me to console hi, but I'm not going to do it unless you tell me to run console hi. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to refresh. Now my hi is gone. But if I wanted that to run, I could come over here and I could console hi. And what I'm doing is because I'm using these parentheses, JavaScript now knows, oh, I remember what the function console hi is supposed to do. It's supposed to run this code. So here's a function. I'm going to remember all of this, but I'm not going to do it until you tell me to. Oh, here's another function. I'm going to remember what it's called, but I'm not going to do that console hi until you tell me to. Oh, console hi. I remember what console hi was. That's this. Oh, you're giving me parentheses? That means you actually want me to run this console. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh that. And I get my hi. And just to do one more hammer at home, I'm going to pass in 5. And I'll pass in some string as well. So what I can do is I can pass it parameters, right? And so in this parameter, this 5 and the cat, I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh, and I get hi printed out. Well, why? Well, when I go over here, console hi isn't expecting any parameters. So it's like 5 and cat. Sure, you can tell me 5 and cat, I'm still going to console log hi because that's the only thing you told me to do in the curly braces. So if I say num and animal, now this 5 number is going to match up with the first parameter. And this cat string is going to match up with the second parameter. So now I can access that. I can say console.log num, and I can also print out my animal. And so now it's going to run, and it's going to go 5. 5 is getting passed in to my num. Okay, cat is getting passed into this variable called animal. So now when I console log num, num knows that it's referencing this parameter called num, and that parameter num matches up to 5 because it's the first thing that I've passed in. So if I save that and I refresh, when I refresh, it says 5 cat hi. Now, just to really prove the point, order matters in parameters. So if I go, oh, I'm going to call the first one animal and the second one num, what's going to happen is it just flips the 2 of them, cat 5. So even though I'm passing 5 in, 5 is now going into animal because it's the first thing. And so that's why you want to be right, because all it's doing is it's going whatever the first thing that gets passed in, I'm going to shove that into a variable called animal. And whatever the second thing I pass in is, I'm going to shove that into whatever the second parameter is in the function. And so you want to make sure, oh, the first thing I'm passing in is the number. So, you could call that whatever. You could call that thing to print 1, and you could call this thing to print 2, right? Doesn't matter. As long as you know that whatever the first parameter is going to match the first parameter name here. And so if I save this and run it, it's going to go num is not defined. It's like num, what is number? I don't understand that. I need to use the thing to print 1 and the thing to print 2. And now when I refresh, it's going to go 5 cat hi. Right? So doesn't matter what you name your parameters, and the name of the parameter here obviously doesn't have to match the name of the parameter here, but the ability to pass information into a reusable function is the point of that parameter. Did I just confuse someone with going over parameters?
That was helpful for me. At first, I thought it was type-based, like it was reading the types. But for you to say that really doesn't matter, you can call it whatever. Just make sure you're lining up the positions. That really helps me. So.
Yep.
Helpful, but I'm still confused, but that's my problem.
Okay. Carolyn, the console that we're in Chrome, I just go to right-click inspect, and then I click on console up at the top. And then that console will be empty until we type something in and hit add to do, and then whatever the value is should print out. I don't know. Yep, the code that I sent doesn't have any console log in it though, so it won't console log anything out. You would have to have. I'm gonna just clean this up. These are the 3 lines you would need in your add new task function in order for that console log to show the value. You're muted, Carolyn, if you're talking to us.
Sorry. Yeah, I was following along and adding the console log stuff, but I got confused about the consoles because when I opened up the file initially and I chose inspect console, I saw all my HTML code. Oh, I know I'm in the elements section. I want to switch to console, but then I actually opened the JavaScript console and it wasn't happy.
If you have an error in here,
there's nothing.
Okay, type something in the form field
All right.
and then click add to do or whatever your button is.
All right. Console. Okay, go away. All right. Oops. Inspect. Console. All right. So, oh. Okay.
So super important to understand why there's nothing in the console when the page first loads, right? That's because all of this is in a function, and JavaScript is basically saying whenever you tell me a function and give me a function name, I'm going to remember what to do when you tell me to run that function, but I'm not going to do it until you tell me to run it. And
Okay.
the HTML here, this on submit add new task, is what is telling the JavaScript, hey, go run the code that is in this function.
Okay. I entered Cadillac just cause, and I get some error stuff, uncaught, reference error. So I don't know. Have to figure it out. I don't want to hold people back.
So
I've
that
got
is
the
that is
output.
probably something in your JavaScript that's not working.
Okay.
So let's just
Anyway,
hop
yeah,
back
thanks.
to the to-do list. We haven't quite gotten JS to save the element yet, but it is 8:16, and I feel like I have rammed enough information in your brain. So what we're going to do, because we're going to come back to this tomorrow, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to say, use JS to save the element. Well, what did I do last night? So what instead I'm going to do is I'm going to say print input value in JavaScript. And that's crossed out, right? Because we have that working. We went to our console. We made sure that our add new task was here. We were getting the value. All of that is working. So now we can use JS to save the element and talk about data stores starting tomorrow, which is where your friend Array is going to come back. So what I will do is I'm going to paste all of this code in the student pasted code section. And as soon as I am off tonight, after helping people, I will also post it in GitHub and send a link to the code updated in GitHub. So if you want, you can pull that repo and get access to all of that code. But I will send a link to that. I will send a link to that as soon as I have it up in GitHub. I will be here for questions. I will be here for at least the next 12 minutes, but definitely longer than that if anyone has questions. Homework tonight is to try and get caught up to this point. I'm not going to create a Google Classroom assignment because we'll continue working on this over the next couple days. And then whenever we hit that finish point, we'll be able to go in and I'll have that assignment up for you guys. But want to go at the pace that you guys are going at. So before you leave, there is a link in the Google Classroom. I will also send it in the Zoom chat and in the students channel in Slack. Under the classwork tab and under feedback surveys, there's a survey link for 30-second feedback. This is not the weekly feedback. I'm not tricking you guys into anything. All the form fields are optional. 3 questions. If you want to throw any notes in, you can. Super easy, and you can submit it anonymously as well. So you don't have to put your name on it if you don't want. That is just like the weekly feedback where I was trying to feel out where you guys were at with JavaScript. This is a really helpful way for me to know tomorrow, hey, most of the class thought I was speeding through and 1 or 2 students that were getting it were egging me on. Or I go, oh, I was going too slow for most students. I can adjust the pace. So this is a really quick feedback form. If you could submit it before leaving tonight, I gave you an extra 10 minutes of class back. So I better see some submissions there. But let me put this, it is in the Zoom chat, it is in the Slack, and it is under classwork and feedback surveys, 30-second feedback in Google Classroom. And with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and open the floor up for questions.
Can I share my screen?
You sure can.
Thank you. I'm having this happen right here.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to your HTML. So your form on submit, delete out the closing arrow tag on line 17.
Delete out the closing this?
Yep. And make that an equal. And then move your closing arrow tag to the end of that line. And then just delete out that extra form tag that it gave you that you don't want. And then save and give it a whirl.
Thank you.
So
Well,
actually, you can keep going. If you type something in and then click on the add to do.
Okay. Oh,
you
there it
even
is.
have it working in the console.
Okay, thank you. I looked at that thing for so long.
No problem.
All right.
And the good news is you were keeping up with all the JavaScript stuff too. So like you had it all lined up. So that's when you go, well, if on submit is showing up, the error has to be on that one line. And that's when it is obviously in the middle of class, you can't do it. But that's when I get up, I walk away. I'm like, I can't figure out why this isn't working. And you come back 10 minutes later and you look at the on submit and you're like, oh my God.
Thank you.
So feel free if you're feeling ambitious and you want to knock through the rest of the to-do list, you're welcome to steam ahead. But that's where we will be picking up tomorrow. So feel free to play around with your JavaScript, your HTML. If you would like to make it pretty in your CSS, you can make it pretty. Eventually, we will get back to circling back to Bootstrap and cleaning it up that way. But feel free to play around, right? Like if you break it, you can always undo it. Susan, I'm reading your message now. You don't get the submit event to show, but when you do see the actual text that you're inputting.
Yeah, like it's working, but when you did it and you showed it, you could see, you know, who all the buttons and how it was talking and all that. I don't see that.
Yeah. So right before your console log, where you do the input.value, throw in another console.log and put event in as the parameter. And then save, refresh, and submit the form again.
Wait, where do I put that?
Right before your, anywhere in your function,
Form,
really.
Before the form field dot value?
Yeah.
Sorry, okay. And then what did you call it?
Do it on a separate line and anywhere in the function and just do console.log parentheses event.
Okay.
And event goes in the parentheses. Talking code is one of those things where like if you know what you're supposed to be typing, it's super easy, but then to like verbalize code is a very hard thing to do.
So now when I type something in, it will potentially show?
Hopefully.
Oh, it did. Yep.
Cool.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just took that out because, you know, there's more advanced information in there and we don't really need to be snooping in the event. But if you are curious, feel free to dive in.
Yeah, I just wanted to see it. It looked helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
So for the index.html file that people pulled up into Chrome, were they pulling it from JS Code, Visual Studio Code, or were they pulling it from their Finder? Does that make a difference? Because it, or will it be
They
this?
were writing it in VS Code, but then they probably opened it in Finder to get it into their browser.
Because I just went right from the browser and opened the name,
That's fine. That works too.
which
No
the
difference.
Finder will path it out the same way.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's still nothing in there. We'll figure it out. I don't want to spend time tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
figure it out.
If you want to share your screen, I'm happy to
Oh,
work through
I
it.
just, if someone else has something more burning, because I've been asking a lot of questions tonight, so
Anyone else have questions?
I don't want to take up. All right,
Go for it.
let's see, get this out of the way here. And get these out of the way. All this. So I have my console on the side.
Yep.
I just refreshed a few times and that's what I got there.
Okay.
It all looks good, but
go ahead and type something in the text box. And hit add to do. Okay, so you've got an uncaught reference error, add new task is not defined. So let's go to your VS Code.
Gotta move these guys. Can you see any of my Zoom stuff? It's like all
No,
these things are in the way.
Zoom hides it from us. Okay.
Go away.
So
all right. In my JavaScript one?
Nope. Before that. So what tag do we use to link CSS?
Right here.
Yep. And what tag do we use to link JavaScript?
Right here.
Well, half of it's there.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was missing something. So I remember, like for Bootstrap, it's this really long one, but.
So what tag do we use to link JavaScript? Don't look at your code, just.
I don't know.
What tag do we use to link JavaScript?
The word script.
Yep. And
Oh,
so
instead of links, oh, it should link and close script. Yeah, I should have. Yeah, I should have caught that.
okay, and now how do we tell the computer that we're going to pass in a string? Whenever we tell the computer, hey, I'm going to send you some text, what do we use?
Input?
Nope. Well, kind of.
Yeah.
But you know, if we're going to console log out the word cat, what does cat have to be enclosed in?
Quotations.
Yep. And so
And parentheses.
when we send it source, the source needs.
Oh. Yeah. Oy vey. Don't put me in charge of the nuclear plant programming.
And then just remove that semicolon, the colon that you have there.
Yeah, where that came from.
And then it will let you put in your closing quote.
And does it have to be double quotes?
No, in HTML, it can be single quotes as well, but double quotes has definitely become the standard.
But in JavaScript, it's usually single, except some stuff I was reviewing on arrays today, it had double, so.
No, JavaScript, from what I have seen, tends to lean into double quotes as well.
Oh, really?
But it is totally a coding style thing. There are some companies that don't use double quotes or single quotes. They use backticks everywhere.
Yep.
My company, we have a coding style, and every time you hit the save button on your code, it will reformat your code into the coding style that I dictate. So even if you use single quotes in all of your code, as soon as you save the file, I go, I don't care that you like single quotes, and I replace them all with double quotes. So really depends on the company style. But go ahead and save that.
Yep, it's saved.
Okay, and then go back to your browser, Chrome.
All right. And actually, I can talk to you over here on my big thing and go into my, there we go. Let's see. Chrome.
Latonia, backticks are actually more powerful than single quotes or double quotes because you can use the $ curly brace and then put a variable name right in it. So I actually really like using backticks for everything. It is definitely a little more new age. Newer developers do that everywhere. But it is definitely more powerful and absolutely nothing wrong with doing it. It's just getting older developers used to using backticks instead of double quotes or single quotes.
Spect. All right, I'm just trying to open this again. When I go in, it goes right to.
Right next to that close button, hit the 3 dots.
Oh, right.
And then the one with the shaded rectangle at the bottom.
Oh yeah, I want it on the right though. It doesn't.
Oh, okay. Then just drag it open to expand it a little bit more.
Come on. Nobody likes me tonight.
Just yeah, there you
we
go.
go.
You got it. Okay, and now you see those double right arrows up at the top.
There it is. That explains everything. Console, right?
Yep. Okay, and so now you've got a missing parenthesis after argument list. So I've got no idea what that means, but before we leave the browser, see where it says script.js:8? That is telling us not only the file name, but that it is an issue on line 8.
Yes.
So let's go to your code.
Oh, come on.
If you just hit Command Tab, it's going to jump you back over to the last program you were in.
Yeah, I know. Okay, here we go.
All right, so go ahead and open your script.js. Okay, and let's look at line 8, and it's saying document.getElement by ID, and I see 2 opening parentheses, and I see 1 closing parenthesis.
Should it be that? No.
Nope. So open the parenthesis there.
Right.
Where you are.
Right before the quotes?
Yep, an opening one. And now you see the closing one for the one you just typed. But look at the console log. You have an opening console log, but you don't have the closing parenthesis for the console log.
This one up here, or you can't see this one here.
So look, let's match them. This one here matches this one here. And we know they match because you see the little like gray box that's around them.
Yes.
Those are showing that this one matches this one. So those are taken care of. Now we've got another one right here.
Yes.
Where does that go? Where does the closing one go?
Over here.
Yep. Okay, save. And go back to our Chrome and refresh. And we've got our 5 and our cat. And if we go into our text input and type in hi and click on add to do, hi comes out and our input that we had console logging as well. So you are all caught up.
Fantastic. And I understand why. That's just, you gotta walk through it. You just can't. Yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I'll go fill out that thing for you. And
thank you. That is totally something that I came up with, by the way. That's not something that Jesse's mandating or anything like that. But it's super helpful for me.
You're one of the most responsive instructors, and there's a lot of good instructors. So that really puts you in a place. I hope I get an A. No, seriously, you really, because everyone's coming from a different background. Everything's in a different place. Everyone's a different age, different whatever they've been through. And and we can't all just fly through, and some of us are really struggling. So it really helps to know there's like a chance to breathe. So thank you.
No problem.
We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Anyone else have questions?
I'm all set. Thank you so much. This was really good. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
this was great. I have an idea of taking that code that we did a little while ago to guess your favorite color and trying to translate that into a function, and then I could put it on a web page now.
Yep.
So maybe I'll try that a little bit tonight.
And when we get to React, you'll be able to do it all over again in half the lines of code.
Cool.
Anyone still on who has a question, or otherwise I will hop out of here. Awesome. Well, you guys have a good night.